Fear tells me I can't go do something creative with my wife. I can't give her a hug. She may reject me.
It's actually not something wrong with you. It's not that you're broken. It's not that there's anything bad about you. It's just a normal physiological response, but it's on overdrive. So we got to turn down the alarm system.
Oh, I get so excited every time I hear that, mostly for you. That's Francis and Dr. Camilla Pekka from A Growing Space. Their 10-week program will literally transform your heart, mind, body, soul, spirit, the entire thing. I am so confident in these guys. They are a partner for Series 3. All you need to do to learn more is text the word LEARN to 623-202-4553. That's in the show notes as well. Trust me when I tell you that if you're going to go with them, you should be ready because they're going to help you get it done.
I'm ready.
Find and learn from people who lived it wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from people who lived it.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
I wanted to get Francine on because we had a conversation while I was in Massachusetts that just blew me away. I was really talking to a mom who was so authentic and so real in her moment that I said what she's doing right now needs to be amplified. And so, Francine, welcome to our podcast, Learn from People Who Lived It. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah, she's up in my hometown there in Minnesota, right. up near the Detroit Lakes. Is that where you are?
Yeah, we are in Detroit Lakes. Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
Beautiful.
I'm sure you're enjoying beautiful weather. Right. This is the part of the year where it's nice in Minnesota, except for the mosquitoes.
That's right. So far, we haven't seen many of those, so it's been windy, so we're good there.
You have an organization called Kid in the Corner, and it's the most logical place for me to start with the why. And so why did you start Kid in the Corner, Francine?
So the reason I started Kid in the Corner was 5 years ago, just this past June 13th. I lost my youngest son, Zachary, to suicide. And he had a public, short 6-month battle with mental illness. Not really sure how much of it had manifested before his first breakdown, but between his first breakdown, which was in December of 2016, till the time he took his life, which was June of 2017, it was really a short period of time. And through that time, we tried to get him help. He tried to get help. We couldn't find the right providers, on and on and on. And after that night, we took a good long look at that story, and we really realized that one of the biggest obstacles in us being able to get Zachary and thus save his life was stigma. Stigma was really the starring role in his story in all aspects of it. And so we started Kid in the Corner, whose mission is to shatter the stigma that surrounds mental illness and then to support the kid in the corner, whoever that may be.
So will you tell me a little bit about Zachary? What kind of a kid was he?
So Zachary was the youngest of three. He was sort of a typical third child, although he was a very old soul, extremely kind and empathetic, which I think in the long run sort of worked against him. But he was the kid who, would notice if a teacher was not in a good space, he'd bring a chocolate bar, or if people moved in next door, he'd bring a welcome basket. Huge animal advocate. Animals were his life. This place here in Detroit Lakes was literally his favorite place on earth. He's here everywhere. He was an entrepreneur. Money was a big deal to him, and he loved giving back. So he loved to make money, and then he loved to give back to organizations that really mattered to him and to his family. He was gifted, really great math kid, great at the Rubik's Cube, couldn't spell.
I couldn't either, Zachary. Don't worry about it. I couldn't either. Yeah, right.
Exactly. He was diagnosed with ADHD. So as you can imagine, trying to look in his backpack was like, oh my God. So, right. He was just a cool kid. He really was.
How old was he when he completed suicide?
He was 16.
16 years old. Yeah, that's a term that I learned a couple of years ago, thanks to somebody named Leanne, whose son has also completed suicide. And and you maybe can educate our audience on why that's the term. It's not committed suicide, it's completed suicide. What's the difference? Suicide.
Right. And I use died by suicide, but any
you do.
Fine. Yes. Committed suicide gives that sort of stigma to it. in that it was a crime. It was when we say somebody committed something, they committed a crime. And suicide is not a crime. Suicide is, it's a disorder or a disease that people have died by. So it's really important to make sure that we're not carrying forward that stigma of criminal activity. This is not that.
Do you mind if I ask how Zachary took his life?
So in the very end, right, Zachary was misdiagnosed. He was actually bipolar, but had been diagnosed with depression. And the reason that he was misdiagnosed was in that 6-month period, he had to see 4 different providers. One that was out of pocket, not sustainable, one in the hospital, one when he came out who was not a good fit, and then finally the last one who probably would have been a good fit. But the last provider nobody had him long enough, right, to properly diagnose him. So he was on antidepressants, and he was in fact bipolar. And antidepressants in bipolar people, especially teens, can increase suicidal ideation. So the night that he died, he was taking care of a client's animals. He had started this business called Perfect Walker and Pet Sitting. He had been taking care of this woman's animals. She was out of town. Her neighbor was watching the animals. The neighbor got sick. She asked Zachary if he'd take it over. He said yes, got the keys, spent a couple weeks in her house. And during this really manic episode, he had locked one of the cats behind a door, and he had to break the door to get the cat out. He was so focused on getting that door fixed that he really worked himself up. And she was coming home. The door wasn't fixed. He found a gun and he took his life.
Where were you when you found this bit of news out?
So I had texted him. I was home. I had texted him, about an hour before that, half hour before that, saying, it's like 8:30 at night. It's time to come home. And he said, give me a little while longer. I want to make sure the house is perfect for her. A little while later, he texted a group text, 8 of us, grandparents and siblings, myself, and said, I love you all so much. Thank you for everything you've ever done for me. And we knew in that moment. And I called him. He answered. I said, Zachary, what is going on? And he said, please, Mom, hang up. I don't want you to hear this. And we got in the car and it was basically around the corner. And we got there and he had taken his life.
There's so many people that slip through the cracks. But how many parents, you think about your situation, I think about your situation just very literally, Francine. And I think, okay, you've got 3 kids. Yep. You've got 1 kid who's got something that you're needing to tend to. You have to take him to doctor's appointments. You have to schedule doctor's appointments. And whether you want to admit it or not, that is all. It's a humongous time suck. It takes a lot of time and energy. Yeah, right. To get all these people, to get all the meetings, and coordinate schedules. And it's already an uphill battle to want to take care of yourself. And then stigma comes and makes it even harder.
Exactly. Other people who have been through it aren't talking about it because they're ashamed, because there's the stigma that surrounds it. And so while there are so many resources out there, and it really is a strength to ask for help, we need to change the mindset so that people do come forward and get the help that they need before it's too late.
I tell you, for me, and I don't know if you experienced this or maybe Zachary experienced some of this stuff, but I've been deeply depressed before, and I've been in that space where you start having suicidal ideations and you start thinking about those types of things. Yeah. And what's frustrating for the person going through it, i.e. me, is that you don't always understand why you feel the way you feel. And it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to wake up and be like, why does my head go here? And why does their head not go there? Did you ever have an opportunity to walk through that equation with Zachary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one thing about Zachary was the night that he had his very first attempt at suicide was the night that it sort of all blew up. And when he came out of his room that night, he was hysterical. And he said, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I don't know why I'm taking all these things personally. And I just want to feel like myself again. I just want to get back to myself. I'll do whatever it takes. So this was a kid that was fighting for his life. If they said to him, you need to go to this 10-week program called DBT, he went and didn't miss. If you need to take this medication, he took it every day. If you need to do this, create a life worth living, he created his pet sitting business. He did what they told him. He wanted his life back. He was sick. We tell people, or we think that we're hearing people tell us, snap out of it. You don't have it so bad. It's not that bad. People have it worse than you. The fact of the matter is, it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to be sick and get the help that you need. We just need to be able to connect those dots and make sure that when people are feeling like you or like Zachary or like I have felt, that we know what we need to do to speak up, get the help, lean on the people we need to be able to lean on, and let's get through it. And I feel like the only way that we can do that is to remove the stigma.
Yeah, you've been really passionate about this, and Kid in the Corner now has touched, well over 3,000 kids, ranging from, 4th grade to 12th grade. And some of the feedback from the students is really incredible. You sent me your year-end report just a few days ago, and I love some of these captions from the children. They say, quote, "I learned how to be a kind and caring person for myself and others." Mm-hmm. Somebody else said, "The most important thing I've learned from Kid in the Corner is that it's important to reach out to someone who is struggling with their mental health."
Right.
And that's the point I'm going to stick on here for a couple of minutes with you and me. So, I agree. The most important thing to do is to reach out to somebody who is struggling with their mental health. But here is the problem, as far as I can tell. And having now the opportunity to interview hundreds of people along the way about their mental wellness and health struggles, most people have zero clue on what they should say to somebody who is struggling. And the problem with that is that 90% of what comes out of their mouth is completely dismissive. It's
right.
It's the things you just said. Oh, somebody else has it harder. Oh, come on. You'll be okay. Tomorrow's a new day. Blah, blah, blah. Part one of this thing, and you must be feeling this too, is almost education surrounding what do we say?
Exactly. So, the program that we have that we reach out to youth with is called the Penny Pledge program. We took a lot of time to evaluate what we really thought youth needed, spoke to a lot of youth, healthcare providers, mental health providers, educators, and we came up with this program. It's called the Penny Pledge. Zachary was a coin collector. And when he died, we found thousands and thousands of pennies. And so we drill holes in them now. One of the schools drills holes in them now. And through this Penny Pledge program, kids learn 3 things. They learn how to reach out to others and what that means, what to say, what not to say, what happens when you reach out to somebody and they don't reach back out to you. It's not about taking it personally. It's about understanding that the person you reached out to knows that you care, right? It's really about empathy. We learn how to advocate for our own mental health, create self-care plans.
Oh, that's a big one.
Identify who and what a safe and caring person is, right? So, I may have a great friend who's a great hiking person, great hiking buddy, can really motivate me when it comes to hiking, but might not be the most empathetic person to talk to. Doesn't mean they're not a good friend for hiking, it means they're not the right person for me to be my safe and caring person. So we talk a lot about who we think our safe and caring person should be, and then who our safe and caring person really should be.
Sounds so incredible. I mean, don't you feel, and you, of course you feel this way. I'm feeling this way. Like, I feel like every parent needs to see your presentation.
Yeah.
Every child needs to see your presentation. People just need to know what to do. Will you mind walking me through? And I'm not asking you to give away the whole thing, but
that's okay.
Okay. So let's start at number 1. You say people learn how to reach out.
Right.
Okay. So, let's just say that, somebody wants to pick up a tool or two here while they're watching or listening to our podcast. So give me one of the things that you suggest to folks about how they can reach out.
So we talk about, let's say in your community, let's talk about your classroom community.
Okay.
If somebody's been gone for a couple of weeks, maybe reach out and say, hey, I noticed you've been absent. Do you need any help with homework or notes? So you're not asking them what's wrong necessarily. You're not trying to get them to talk to you about what their personal things are, but you're letting that person know, oh my gosh, somebody noticed I haven't been in school in a couple of weeks.
And I think the most important thing, that they're not alone.
Thank you.
They know they're not alone.
I've noticed you're not invisible. I noticed that chair has been empty for 2 weeks. I'm just reaching out to let you know, A, that I noticed that you're gone, and B, if you need any help with schoolwork or notes or anything like that, let me know.
Awesome.
And you may or may not hear back from them, but that's not the point, right? The point is you have reached out and let somebody know that they're not invisible. So that's just one way of going about that. And in some of the younger grades, their homework for the first night is to reach out to 3 people, and then let's talk about it tomorrow. And kids come back with the most incredible stories. It may not even be somebody struggling, but everybody wants to feel connection. And you never know who is struggling with what. We have ups and downs in our lives that may not be critical or catastrophic, but it's always nice. Listen, last night I got a text from a friend who texted me a picture of Zachary and her daughter from preschool. And she said, one of her projects this summer is going through old photos. And she took the time to take a picture of it and text it to me. And I said to her, you have no idea how much that means to me. What a gift it is to get a photo I've never seen before.
We say this every week on our podcast, Francine. We say for people who have lost children, the worst thing you can do is pretend like they never lived. Let's pick up on this to the second step, which is what to say. And I love this discussion with my whole heart because this is where people fail. I really know in my heart that people are wonderful. I think they're loving. I think they're caring. I just also believe they have zero communication skills. And so they don't know what to do and say. So give me a couple of things that you might say to high school students about how to approach this verbally.
So I think, you can, if you know that somebody's struggling, you can say to somebody, I noticed that you've been struggling and I'm here to support you. Just like that. I mean, that's really enough. You don't have to pry. You don't have to dig. That person may say thank you and I will come to you when I need you. Or that person may sit down and open up to you. And if you don't hear back from that person, set a reminder to check in again in a week or 2 weeks. It's really about not necessarily what to say. It's about how you make the other person feel.
Well, and I like this thing that you just mentioned about following up, because here's the thing about depression, if people don't understand it. The person who is depressed, and I'll speak about myself, we are not always in the mindset to want to fix it or make it right. And sometimes you kind of have to catch us on a momentum day. Sometimes we need that phone call on a day where we've already had a couple of good things happen. And then that's the catalyst that pushes us over the edge and really makes us move to the next step. So this idea that it's one and done, or, I tried, or I sent the text, or I reached out and then backed off. I love that you're amplifying the message of keep going, keep trying. And, just letting people know you're there. That's all you have to do. You don't have to bring up the big, ugly truth. You don't have to talk about it and use all the words. It's literally looking at somebody and saying, I see you.
And not trying to fix their situation, right? So we all know that when we're having sad and bad days, we may not want to get out of bed. So empathy really plays a big role in it. So I might be fine today and I'm ready to go out for a walk because it's a gorgeous day. And there might be somebody else who wants to stay in bed all day. And for me to say, it's gorgeous, let's go out. You should go out. You shouldn't be in bed all day. That's no way to deal with your depression. Is so invalidating. We can't be fixers, right? It's not our place to go in and fix people. It's our place to help people get on that journey themselves and to know that they're supported.
Well, it seems to me, Francine, that you have learned the ultimate lesson. A lot of people who follow my podcast know that when I was 23, my father passed away in front of me and had a heart attack. And I tried to save his life and I couldn't. Sorry. And that was a really big mark for me. I spent a lot of years wondering why that happened. As I'm sure you've spent a lot of years wondering why Zachary's accident happened, right? And as far as I can tell, really, honestly, and I've prayed on this, I've meditated on this for so many years. As far as I can tell, the only reason that we ever really go through difficult things is that so we can help other people when they get there. Our experience lends the ability to help somebody else through this journey. And so for you to lean in the way that you have is ultimately one of the best ways to continue his legacy. I wanted to understand, if you wouldn't mind, and you don't have to speak on behalf of people if they're not comfortable with it, but have Zachary's brothers, is this something they want to join in? Do they feel compelled to help you out on this effort? Has this become a family affair for you guys?
Oh, absolutely. So Zachary has an older brother and an older sister.
Okay.
Who, as you can imagine, have both been severely traumatized.
Totally.
They were super close. And my daughter, Gabrielle, has come and spoken with me in different schools and at different events. And she's a huge advocate. And my son, Jacob, also helps us out at events and make sure that, he's been a big part of it as well. And, and Zach's dad is also. And I think it's really helped all of us to have something to focus on to change the situation rather than to sit in our anger
and confusion, right? Because I really applaud what you're doing, and I'm late to the party because, good on you for being smart about it. When our dad died, and I want to talk about this a little bit with you, but when my dad died, what I noticed was the dynamic in my family shifted dramatically.
Yes.
Dramatically. People weren't as close. They weren't as communicative. Again, going back to what we said earlier, people don't know what to say. And so they just back up, even if they're in the family. Did you experience a lot of interesting new ground?
Oh, yeah.
Post. Okay.
So we're Jewish, and at Shiva, right, at Zachary's Shiva, somebody came up.
Which is what, in case people don't know?
So Shiva is after the funeral. In the Jewish culture, we have three to 7 nights sort of afterwards where people can come and gather and give support to those that are grieving. You're supposed to grieve like that or mourn like that for a week. And then you're supposed to go outside and take a walk around the block. That's sort of your reentry into community. But during that time, it happens in the home. It usually happens after sundown. And it's a couple hours. It's an open house and people can just come give their support. And there was somebody there that I didn't know well from our congregation who had lost her husband to suicide a year earlier. She gave me the name of a grief counselor, and I went to see her immediately. And I can't tell you how much I learned about grief from her. She said that what happens is when there's grief in a family like that, especially traumatic grief like you and I have experienced, everybody sort of is catapulted into their own sort of grief bubbles. And those bubbles sort of float around each other, but rarely do they combine. And I would have thought that an experience like this would bring the family closer.
Blows it up almost. It's so weird how it works.
It really blows it up. And I think the reason for that is it's so traumatic that first of all, you have to absorb the shock. I know for me, I remember the night that Zachary died, Gabrielle was there with me. I couldn't hug her. I couldn't look at her because for me, it was almost like if I did that, it was real.
But made it so real. I can't even imagine.
And I remember hyperventilating about it. Like I can't see her. I can't look at her. And there were people there somehow. I don't really know how it happened, but, while we were sitting on the steps of that horrid house that night, all of a sudden my friends were there. I'm not sure. I don't even remember who called them or what, but all of a sudden there was a support system standing there at midnight and there were people there to take care of her. I couldn't. And I don't think my son was in Hawaii. Zach's dad was in California. I think we all were dealing with the shock of it and then the guilt of it, the loss of it, the fact that the rug is literally pulled out from under your feet. The confusion of it all. And before I think you can talk to anybody else in your family about it, you have to be able to talk to yourself about it. And I think we all were trying to drown it out, tune it out. I didn't want to learn things that maybe I didn't want to know. I didn't want to have conversations with people that were close to him because I was afraid of what I might learn. It's horrible. It's horrible. And it's taken years for us to sort of come together and be able to talk about it and celebrate him in ways that, we certainly couldn't have in the beginning. It was a very interesting dynamic and not one I was prepared for.
Let me ask you a question. We had not Leanne. Let me go back. We had Carrie Hicks, who was our very first Learn from People Who Lived It episode, and her son died of an accidental overdose. Mm-hmm. And while she was talking about these things, it came out later that she wasn't able to even take a family portrait for years. Yep. And I want to say that it was like 5 or 6 years later, she finally took the first photo. Was there some of that stuff with you too? Was it just too overwhelming to do things without Zachary? Oh,
I mean, coming up here to the lake.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it for a few years. It was very traumatic to be in a place that I knew he loved and was all about all of us. We sold our house in the first year. I couldn't be there. I had been with my husband for 6.5 years. We just got married in April. 5.5 years. We just got married in April. I couldn't have a celebration. Yeah. My whole life, everything feels lopsided. Nothing feels balanced. I don't like to have celebrations without him. I don't like to have photographs without him. I don't like to be in new places without him. I know my daughter has said, she thinks it would be really hard to ever meet somebody and get married to somebody who never knew him. It's very hard to move forward with somebody who was such an integral part of your nuclear family.
I say all the time, death is the greatest teacher you will ever know because you have to learn who you are without them.
That's right.
And that is so, I could get emotional and start crying right now, but that's such a powerful transition that you have to make in your mind and your heart and your soul because you need like a transformation of sorts to get your head around this new life that you're in.
Yeah. And I feel like for a long time I thought, how am I not going to be his parent anymore? But I realized that I am, right? I'm parenting him differently and I spend time with him differently, but I still spend time with him. And I realized that I think, on the first grief retreat that I went on, the first and only grief retreat that I went on, I put aside so many things to spend that weekend with Zachary. And I really felt like I spent the weekend with him and realized at that time that I still can spend time with him. It's just not the same as it was. It will never be a replacement, but I can set time aside so that I can be present for and with him. It's just in a different capacity, and of course I give everything back, in an instant to be able to have him sitting here with me at the lake right now, but that's not going to happen. And so I call this the upside down. I get to spend time with him. I get to talk about him. I get to show photos of him, and I get to, let people learn from what he's been through. And, Jacob, my oldest, said to me about a year ago, he said, gosh, Zach always said he was going to be famous. I don't think he realized it was going to be for this. And, I learned a lot of coping strategies. And again, Kim, the corner for me was the upside down, so much bigger than I am now, and really has helped so many youth and their parents. I still wake up every day without a son.
I implore everybody listening to bring in your program to their middle school or their high school. I think that the earlier you can get this information into kids' hands is probably the better.
Oh, for sure. We start in fourth grade.
Do you start in fourth grade? Well, it's tremendous. And I mean, all the grades that you guys serve, there's certain things that come out of these things. And I'd like to bring us back around and kind of start to wrap up a little bit with the purpose of Kid in the Corner. It does a lot of things, right? It almost is similar to our podcast in a way, Francine, where like my two goals are to help people feel less alone and encourage them to talk about it.
Right.
And it kind of seems like that's a little bit what Kid in the Corner is about. It's like helping you see people and then here's some strategies and solutions to get out of it. One of the things that you're big on is something you just talked about. And it's one of my main focuses in life too, is a self-care plan.
Yes.
Let's spend a minute talking about this because I don't know about you, but I never had a class in school that told me what my job was to take care of. I literally, until my retreat almost a year ago, had 0 people in my life come up to me and say, hey, babe, by the way, it's your job to take care of food, thirst, movement, laughter, structure, routine, relationships. Like it's not other people's jobs to take care of those. It's your job to have a self-care plan. So let's spend a few minutes talking about a good self-care plan for people, because you must have some thoughts surrounding this.
We absolutely do. So, we liken it to sort of having a plan like when you have a cold, right? You need tissues and cough drops, and maybe you like cherry and I like lemon, and I like this kind of tissue and you like that. I want to sleep, but you want to watch Netflix. We all have these days, right? We all have these colds or these sad and bad days. It's about what works for you, what you expect of yourself, and what you know that you can lean into when you are having these days, because you will. Everybody has them. And when your cold turns into bronchitis, you go a step further to get some more help. And when your sadness turns into a long-term depression, you go a little bit further to get some help. So that's how we sort of lay the baseline. But, we talk about safe adults. This is for youth, safe adults in and out of school, what that looks like. Who is a safe adult? Who is somebody that you can talk to? And sometimes it's your parents and sometimes it's not. I mean, I run Kid in the Corner, but I'm not always a safe and caring person for my kids to talk to, because I want to fix it for them. And, fixing it may not be what they need. So it's okay for it not to be your parent. It's okay for you to pick somebody that will listen to you, take you seriously, and help you get to the next step.
I want to throw a little wind behind your sails, because the psychiatrist that we have on our show every single week for Reserve for Vets, he will say, because he's talking to the veteran community specifically, but he will say a lot of times your safe person needs to be somebody outside the house, because talking about it in the house keeps the trauma in the home, and having a place to explore it outside can actually be helpful, very therapeutic. It can be, it can be nice. So I just wanted to throw a little wind in your sail that there's a guy that I regard very highly who's saying the exact same thing. So keep on going.
And I think, again, somebody who is empathetic, somebody who's not going to try to fix it for you, but somebody who's empathetic. It's really important to think about the characteristics you need in your safe person. And that goes for your safe friends. So we know that youth talk to youth before they're talking to adults, right? So think about, who your safe friend to talk to is. And not every, other friends are going through things. Sometimes people don't have the bandwidth either. So really thinking about what you need in that safe friend and what that safe friend can offer you. So that's part of it. One of the things that we really like to talk about in our self-care plan is what we call our self-love language. And I'll give you this little example.
I love this. Go. I don't even know what it is and I already love it.
Yeah. So we look back at Zach's story, right? And Zachary was all about animals. And when he went through this 10-week program called DBT, it's called dialectical behavioral therapy, all types of coping skills and all types of mindfulness techniques and lots of really great information. He learned to create a life worth living. For him, that was about spending time with animals and making money. So he put his entrepreneurial sense and his love for animals together. So whenever he was with animals, taking care of people's animals is when he felt the most self-regulated. Now, for Zachary's dad, it was all about physical activity. Ever since I met him, he has to work out every day to reduce stress. That's his self-love language. When Zach was suffering, his dad would call all the time and say, did you go to the gym? You should go to the gym. I sent you up for the gym. If you go to the gym, you'll feel better. And Zachary finally was like, please, gosh, make it stop. I don't want to go to the gym. I just want to walk dogs. And so understanding what it is about yourself that helps you self-regulate, whether it be listening to music or writing, or, some people will say to me, you should just journal. I don't want to journal. That's stressful to me.
You have to love to write. I don't love to write either. So I'm with you in this space. I'd rather use the words or maybe listen to music or
whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
As long as it's not hurting yourself or hurting somebody else, it's fine. And so the homework the second night is to think about what your self-love language is. Think about what it is that regulates. And now go have a conversation with a family member and find out what theirs is. And then understand that when mom is reading a book for an hour after work, it's not because she wants to spend time with you. It's because that's what she needs to do to take care of herself. Sort of put on her mask before she puts on yours. It's not that you're trying to jerk other responsibilities, but that's what you need to do to self-regulate. So it's a big, big part of the self-care plan. And then we talk about different mindfulness techniques that can sort of regulate your breathing when you're having a breakdown. There's a few different ones. Not everyone works for everybody, but knowing one that works for you, knowing Teen Lifeline, which is a huge, incredible organization of teens that staff a phone system. You can text them. They're there to text or call or walk you through a situation. You're never alone. And so many youth don't even know about Teen Lifeline. They have no idea that resource even exists. And not only can they use it if they're going through something, but if they're not sure how to help their friend or how to reach out to their friend, they can use that resource as well.
I feel like I want to talk to you all day long, but I know we only have limited resources. I love what you're doing and I love where you put your energy in. And I would like to wrap up by kind of ending where we started, surrounding the word stigma. And that, if there's anything, like you said, that was a star of Zachary's story was stigma, because all the people around probably have the wrong information coming to him. And at the end of the day, the long and the short of this is Zachary didn't feel seen or heard, or he didn't feel like he belonged in this world. And whatever led him to that path is probably up for debate, and you could drive yourself mad thinking about it. But the point is that it happened now, and stigma is the star of the story. So how, in your opinion, can we help reduce stigma? I'd like to hear your answer.
So I really believe in this quote by Fred Rogers. Anything that is human, it is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable is manageable. It's all about having the difficult conversations and being able to put ourselves out there. So understanding that mental health and physical health are not any different. There should be no stigma around breaking your leg, and there should be no stigma around a mental illness or depression either. And once we can shift the culture to one of kindness and conversation, I believe we'll be able to shatter the stigma.
I do too. And I'll add on to that. I think the other critical piece to this thing is that as I end every speech, when I go and I have the opportunity to be a motivational speaker in front of groups, I end with this line, which is, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to step into your soul's purpose more.
That's right.
And that's the thing that we can kind of, because the mental, like when you break your leg, something is broken. There's a physical break there, and then you go in and they mask it back together. They mend it back together. They put a cast on it, and 6 weeks later you're walking again. Your mental health isn't quite like, it isn't broken like that. They need to rewire things. So that's different.
Well, and I think also it's really important to note, right, that if you break your leg, you need help. You know you can't heal it by yourself.
Right.
And so there's no stigma attached to going to the doctor or the surgeon and getting your leg fixed. you know you have to. You know you cannot do it alone. And I think we have to put that same mindset around mental health. When you have a cold, yes, you know you're going to get better. But again, when that cold turns into bronchitis, there's a red flag there. And you know now, I need further help. And it's the same thing when it comes to mental health, mental illness. It's okay to have sad and bad days and understand what we need to do to take care of them and have our self-care plans. But when it becomes more than something that we can manage, we have to get help. There is help available. And we owe it to ourselves to get help. We need to get out from under that stigma that says we should be ashamed.
Well, let me just wrap up by saying Zachary was lucky to have you. You're a fantastic mom as I can see it. And what you've been handed is insurmountable and completely overwhelming in nature on almost every single level. But I think it's a testament to you as a parent, the way that you've stayed in this game and helped Jacob and Gabrielle and the other family members through this, and then created this Kid in the Corner organization, which highlights Zachary. It's funny to me when I'm doing these recordings where I'm talking to a parent who's lost a child. I feel the child the whole time we're talking, and I've felt Zachary the whole time we've been talking. It's just kind of been, this energy has been right here of like, yes, guys, keep going. Yes, keep saying it. Help somebody else, right? Like, and that's so neat, isn't it? Isn't that such a cool way to remember him?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I encourage you to reach out and get this program in your schools. So many educators that watch and listen to this podcast, Francine. So let's pray that people reach out to you and get this thing going.
I really hope so. We are prepared to get into as many schools and reach as many youth as we possibly can. All right. We're going to end like this. Your favorite Zachary memory. Oh my gosh. There are so many, but right before he died, one of the things that he was the most proud of was he entered a contest on iHeartRadio for Mom of the Year. And he won. And he won 4 Diamondbacks tickets to the game on Mother's Day. And that was our last Mother's Day together. And it was so special and just one of the best memories I have. Well, Francine, thank you for your time. Kid in the Corner is the organization. I loved spending time with you, and I hope that we get to do a lot more of this. I hope so too. I really appreciate your having me on today, and thank you for the great conversation.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.